Benji Hyer is joining us live from the United Kingdom. Benji, a very good morning to you. It's about, 7:33 there in the morning. Is all systems go for this all-important election?
That's right, good morning. I'm standing outside a polling station in central London, and despite the different reports about voter fatigue, people being fed up about this general election, it hasn't stopped people piling to the polls behind me on what is a pretty cold and wet winter morning. That's because it's the first general election to take place in December in about 100 years here in the UK, but it is also the third election in almost under 5 years. It's a crucial one. Brexit is the main debating point, but there's several other issues that people have been discussing, and it's difficult to call, even at this very late stage, exactly which way this election will go. It is thought, the polls indicate at least, that Boris Johnson, the incumbent Conservative Prime Minister, will gain a majority, the majority that he needs to get his Brexit deal over the line, almost 4 years or so after, or 3.5 years or so after that EU referendum in 2016. But the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, will be very keen to try to stop that and put together some sort of alliance to prevent Brexit or have some sort of second referendum on the matter. We'll only know the outcome early Friday morning, and there's plenty of voting to go until that point.
Look, Benji, it was a frenetic final day of campaigning yesterday. What were some of the candidates saying and some of the key messages ahead of today's elections?
Well, the key message from Boris Johnson has been, and has always been, to get Brexit done. That's his promise to the British people. It was thought that he would do so at the end of October. That was then delayed once more to the end of January 2020. And he basically wants voters to say, if you vote for me, then we're going to be able to get out of the European Union at that date and no later. Jeremy Corbyn, on the other hand, the Labour leader, his position on Brexit is slightly more obscure, and so he's decided to really go hard talking about the National Health Service and other social matters, and he's hoping that those issues are in the British public for them to go out and vote for him. There's plenty of other parties as well out there, the Liberal Democrats, who are traditionally more pro-Remain, and there's other parties like the Brexit Party who say that only they will be able to deliver Brexit and that we can't really trust the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, to do so.
Look, Benji, you mentioned this as well. It's one thing to register to vote. It's another thing to actually turn up and cast that ballot. It's cold, as you mentioned. I see it's wet as well. So I guess the big question is, did Brexit fatigue, so to speak, will that play any part in the voter turnout today?
That's indeed one of the major questions, of course. You can see just from me standing here that it is quite cold out in the UK, and it's starting to rain as well. The forecast is looking dismal, not just in London, but across the rest of the country. How that will affect turnout, we'll only know, obviously, after the results. Turnout in the United Kingdom, traditionally between 60 and 70%. It is thought that because this election is so important, that turnout will be high. But who knows, looking at the weather here and feeling how cold it is, many voters may be inclined to just stay at home and not really bother, especially if they're in what's called a safe seat. If the outcome of their constituency is already known, then really is there any point them going to the polls and casting their vote? Here in London, where I'm standing, there have been people piling into the polling station behind me, as I say. Whether that will continue for the remainder of the day, we'll have to wait and see.
Had the London Bridge attack recently. Safety is always a top priority. Is there a heightened sense, Benji, of security this time round?
We haven't got that, of course, as an indication, and if there is, then that's obviously kept quite under wraps by the government and any forces. Especially after the London attack, though, there was an increased debate around security and a lot of discussions around actually whether it was right for people to be let out of prison at different times. Yeah. But actually, that has not been the major campaign discussion here. It has been about Brexit, it has been about things like the National Health Service, and it's matters like those that I think voters will be thinking most about when they do finally go in and stand next to the ballot box and decide who they're going to vote for in this election, which could decide how British politics goes for years to come.
Benji, just give us a sense in terms of the actual voting processes. Are you using electronic means in terms of voting?
It's actually quite antiquated here, incidentally. People go in and they literally use a pencil to put their cross next to a particular candidate and put it into a box, and then it's manually counted. It's thought that therefore there won't be any data breaches or anything like that. So most people will be using those means. You can, if you'd like, use something like a postal vote, and that means that you've already voted in advance by sending it through the mail. But the majority of people will turn out today and actually cast their vote in person using the method that I just described. Right. And that's done in 650 different constituencies across the country. Each of those will have a different winner, a different outcome, and a different MP who will represent that area in Parliament. And it's those MPs that will form the makeup of that Parliament and dictate which party will end up as the biggest and therefore the governing party in the next couple of years.
Benji, appreciate you reporting. Thank you very much indeed. That was Benji Hyer. He's our UK correspondent. We'll come back to Benji at around just after 11 o'clock or so to get a quick update with regards to this all-important election.